Okay, welcome to part 2.5. This is where I'm going to cover some of the bits or extra bits that I didn't cover yesterday in the video. So if you remember yesterday, when we started, we created a drum beat, we started fucking around with a bass line, but we actually liked this perk bass. So the perk bass was, if you remember, was in the key of E, which is slightly different to the key of the actual kick. The kick was in A. So we started fucking about with a bass line in the key of E to match this perk bass. However, the problem there really is we have to change the kick. Now, I like the kick as well, and I like the perk bass. So what do you do in that situation? You've got to change one. So I'm going to leave the kick, but I'm going to show you an example of how an E bass line works with that perk and how we can change this perk to shift up to the key of A and how it will then work with an A bass line and also how that will then work with the kick. So on this section here, I've created sort of some different bass line clips. As I said, I like to jam in this view, which is the session view, to get an idea of what I'm really going to use, because it's just easier than dragging it all into here and dragging them across and auditioning each one. You can literally just click down the clips. So just to remind you guys of where we were at yesterday, if I cancel the bass and I just click play here, that's a pretty groovy, simple beat. So if I just solo the perk bass that I'm talking about, which is in E, if you remember, I converted that to audio. We ran it through Key Finder. We found out it was in E. I then play an E bass line, which I've got down here, with the kick drum on. So we're just going to solo these three. So you click this S, it just solos it. So what you should notice there is that the bass line and the perk bass, well, those hits sound fine, but the kick, although it sounds okay, it's not quite right. And I'll show you the difference in a second. As I said, I can change this to an A kick, but then you change it to a completely different kick, and I like this. So when you find yourself in a position where you like certain elements, it's choose one, lose one is the truth. However, I'll try our best to show you guys how you come across problems when making tunes and how to try and get yourself around them. Remember, this is a tutorial for complete beginners, so I'm not going to start going all complex and splitting bass lines down into sort of 3 different frequencies and all the other shit that you probably see online, because you can get really deep. But the purpose to make a beat is to be simple and effective. If you just dragged a load of loops on, like I said, and the tune came out fine, who gives a fuck? No one really. At the end of the day, it's the end product that people are listening to. So if I want to change, what I need to do is I need to change this perk to an E. Now, it would be quite easy if I went into, if I'd have dragged this perk sound onto a sampler, for example, and I could just change the note to an E. However, remember when we figured this perk out, which came across by mistake when we were fucking around with drum patterns, it was actually attached to a drum rack. So as you can see there, now the drum rack, as I mentioned before, automatically puts things in a simpler. Now on the simpler, unlike the sampler, I can't set what the root note was. Also, you can't do a piano roll. It's different. It comes up as a single hit. If I knew at the start that this was an E, what I could have done is I could have dragged it into a sampler, changed the root note to E, and then simply dragged the initial note to an E, and it would be to an A, sorry, to match the kick, and it would have been fine. But because we can't do that, what you can do is you need to go into simpler, the simpler on the drum rack, and you see this transpose button here. What that'll do is it will shift it up in terms of pitch. Now, what you've got to account for is each semitone, see it moves, is a note on the piano. So if you remember from yesterday, we're in E, we're trying to take A, so we're going to go 5 semitones up. So now that's going to change the pitch. Let me just solo this first so you can hear the difference. So I play it in E. Sounds cool. stop, shift this up. That's now in A. Sounds different, right? It sounds higher, but it's still subby. If you look down here, you still got this low end. Not as low as before, but you still got the low end. So now what that should do, if I take the exact same, so what I've done here is I've got the E minor loop and the A minor loop. If we double click this, that's the pattern. If you double click this, that's the pattern. The only difference is all I've done is I've gone into the E minor loop there. I've pressed Control A. Not that, not there. I've pressed Control A there, highlighted everything from the E minor, sorry. Control A, highlight everything, and I've just moved it up, moved all the notes up. So I can do that because we know it's playing. We know it's playing in E. We know the fuck's sake, can't even get my words out. When you're using the operator, whichever key you play is the root note. So another thing to remember or to know is as you can name your channels, you can right click, rename it to kick. You see that one. You can also rename your clips. So I've done right click, rename, or Control R, and you can rename sort of pattern 1, pattern 2 if you want to be launching clips and remember which one it is. Also change the color so you know that it's different. So if I play the E minor bass with this, it won't sound as in tune as it would if I was to play the A minor bass, the A kick, and the A perk that we've just changed on the simpler. So let me just audition this and I'll show you the difference. So this is off because now the bass is off. You may not notice a major difference, but if I play with A, now we've got these all in key. So if I play that with the rest of the tune, that's how it sounds. So I'm going to fuck this one off because we're not using E. We're going to stay in A minor. And all of these are some different A minor patterns. So I'm just going to audition them just to show you how you can build ideas. I've just done a few ones quickly. Again, you can add more. Double click this, create a clip, extend the clip out if you want, start jamming away. Hit this button if you want to capture it, the little square that comes up there, or you can click record and start recording it. It's entirely up to you. So let me just audition some of these patterns. Now you'll notice this yellow one sounds kind of different to these ones. Now, if you look into the notes, I've started the actual melody on A on these first three. This one, and this one. And if you look at this one, and I fold this down, zoom in a bit more, you'll see that we've got a G sharp and then an A. Now that's still in scale. And what the scale is, as I said before, the scale is a set of notes that fit within the A minor range. So you don't have to start on A minor and it won't sound funky. Now, my musical knowledge isn't that strong to know if E actually does fucking work with A. If it does, happy days. But just so you're certain about what you're doing with it, it's good to just kind of make sure you 100% you've got it in tone. So maybe start with the key of A because the kick is in A. If you really want to, you can start looking on the internet for sort of scales and stuff and do it that way. So anyway, what I was going to show you yesterday, which I didn't get around to, is when I'm going to duplicate this first and foremost, is how to lock it in key without having Ableton push when you're just using your computer keyboard. So if you come over to MIDI effects, and you go over to scale. Now the scales, each you've got different keys, and then you've got different scales within that key. So you can have a pentatonic scale, Mixolydian scale. I mean, to be honest, Lydian scales, you can have an Egyptian kind of fucking scale, and they give a different feel to the music. Now, just play around with them and pick one which you like. For example, pentatonic, I think that's 5 notes, if I'm right. That's 5 notes within the minor scale. So if I go to, let me have a look, minor pentatonic scale, and I put this onto here, you'll see it's at the start of the chain. I then set this to A. And then if I play and I click this little piano at the top again on my keyboard, and I start playing notes, I'm not sure what octave it's in. You can't hit a wrong note. It's fucking Mongol proof. If you hit the wrong note, it will just either move it up to the next note in the scale or keep the same note in the scale or move it down in the scale. So you can jam around on your keyboard and it'll be absolutely fine. You know you're going to be in key. One thing I didn't mention as well, when we started messing around with this chain yesterday on the bass line, the most important thing, not the most important thing, but one of the important things is an EQ. You can see I haven't got it on there, but I'll save that for the sort of mix down or the gain stage in kind of the process. Also with the levels, because I'm hitting sort of really low frequency bass notes and some of the high ones, when you hit some of the higher frequencies, what it will do is it will increase the volume. So yesterday, the volume on here was fluctuating quite a lot. So what I've done is I've dropped a compressor on. And what a compressor will do is you can compress the peak and it will kind of get everything to the sort of same volume rather than one sound being massively high and then massively low, dependent on the notes. So all I've done, dragged the compressor on, pulled down the threshold a little bit, made sure that it was on peak, and it's just compressing that peak a little bit better. So let's just have a little play with the keyboard, the actual keyboard, with this pentatonic A minor scale attached. Let's see if we can come up with something. Either way, whatever note I hit shouldn't sound too strange. Let's go. We'll go down an octave again. If I go all the way down, so you'll see there, this. If I hit D and F and T, those 3 notes are the same because technically it would be out of scale, so it's pulling back into scale. So it's only really going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes. And they're the only 5 notes you can play no matter what you press on the keyboard. I mean, that example was pretty shit, but just realize or just go through your keyboard and see what plays, go through each note. Remember, you've got the black keys as well, which are like W, E, and figure out which ones. So for example, E and S are the same. It's pointless me going S, S, E and thinking it's going to be different. It's the same fucking note. So you can just go for your keyboard and then realize which ones you can play and which ones will be different, and then figure out a pattern from there. So that's basically it. Just a little short one for tonight. If you've got any questions, let me know. Yo, one thing I forgot to mention, as I said, I'm not a fucking classically trained pianist, so I can't play a piano. E is actually in the fucking A minor scale. So the whole example I've just shown you doesn't really matter because they're going to work. However, if we take a note that isn't in the E minor scale, the A minor scale, and just take rather than take just, just take what I've shown you if you need to change the fucking pitch. So what I've done is I've gone back and I've changed the percussion, this percussion bit here, back into the E. I've then decided on a bass line, which the notes in the bass line you can see are A, E, A sharp, which throws it off a little bit. Sometimes it's cool to go off, um, and then A, E, E, and G. So it sounds like this. Oh yeah, A and E are going to work together. But what I'm trying to get at is don't write a bass line in the E minor scale if you kick drums A, unless A minor and E minor scales completely fucking work. But check that out. Check that out first. Check your scales out, right? Um, don't put fucking just you can have each scale consists of a crossover of notes, but there's certain ones that work and certain ones that don't, but you'll tend to hear that anyway. So with the kick, we're starting on the A because the kick does hit on like on let's start this as one. So if I set this to one, you just get rid of all this other shit. Jamming about. So that's set to one. So the kick's gonna hit on 1, 2, 3, 4. So when the kick hits there, it's A. When the kick hits there, that's when the bongo percussiony thing starts playing in E, but it doesn't really matter because as you can see at the very start of the video when I said you should be able to tell the difference. Only if you've got a fucking pair of bat ears would you be able to really hear it because it did blend, it didn't sound completely off. You'll know when you're completely out of key because it'll sound really, really obscure. So then I've got an E note, which is playing here when the bongo things are pushing. And then this one here, this note, that's not in the scale. That's not in key. Now, sometimes if it works, it's funky just to throw it off a little bit. Not completely, but there's nothing else playing here. The kick's not playing because kick plays there. The part bass isn't playing there, so it's on its own. And then we keep it consistent here. That's in the scale. So let's listen again. Now you don't want a 2-bar bass loop to repeat all the time. You can highlight it all, press Control D, make it a 4-bar loop. And then you can change the ending. We can make it an 8-bar loop if you want. So normally I'll change on every 4, sometimes on every 8. But let's just make it an 8-bar loop. Let's duplicate that again. Go up, slide all the way across. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it into the arrangement view so you can see that it's an 8-bar loop. Like this. We'll activate this channel. And what I said before was create like an 8-bar loop, 16-bar loop that loops round and around and around. A little change on the end, maybe with a little roll. So it's easy for you to add something else and it not just sounds too similar. Because what you got to think about is the transition from each part when you add a new element. Now everything works in like 8, so 8, 16, 24, 32. Really, when you know from DJing, if anyone's DJing, that every 15 seconds or so, something tends to change or something comes in. Now, if you look at this bottom bar, that's 15 seconds. There or thereabouts, that's 8 bars. So what I'll do here is we're going to go with this bass line. I'm feeling that for now. We're going to wait to the end, this bit here, and we're going to maybe chop it up or change it a little bit so it's not as repetitive, or we're going to change it here in this bit. Again, it's trial and error. Start from the start. going to take this bit, highlight it all. When you get the hand, click, drag down, and that cuts it. You can loop, press Control and L, and it will loop that section. Double click to go into it. And we want this to be different. So we can just maybe take that off, maybe make that a, and extend the G out, see if this works. No, let's put it there. That's slightly different. So let's hear this. And then roll this down. Again, you could change it here, maybe roll it down the scale. So if I unfold these notes and I play the scale, you'll see what the scale notes are. So what you could do is once you find the scale, just pop a note in. Then back all the way down to this A. So we're not going to use this A, it's too low. But if I fold this down like this and then delete them, any of these notes here will fit within the A minor scale. So what I could do is maybe make it completely different. And if you haven't got a keyboard, so you can draw it in yourself or tap away on your keyboard to do it. Not MIDI keyboard, your actual fucking laptop keyboard or your other keyboard. So let's just see how this works. Maybe end on a C, extend it out, and then boost it up. On this end bit here as well, because you're going to transition in, what you could do is come along to our little perk bass, take it out if you like. A good thing to know is your master chain works the same. So if you click your master chain, hang on a second. So if you click on your master, you can add a auto filter, for example. Now, whatever you put on this master channel will affect all the other channels. But while you're just trying to find a groove, a good thing is you can incorporate, say, a high pass filter, low pass filter, should I say. So you're basically going to pass all the low frequencies. So click this sign here, whichever way you click it, that will just play the lows. So whatever's in this frequency spectrum, if I play, you'll see just low end. Start to release the high end, but we're going to do it the other way. So we're going to do it there. Normally, anything below this line, which is like 100 hertz, tends to be the real sub frequencies. But your bassy range, this is sort of your higher end bass range here, and then your real low sub frequencies there. Now, if you open up the master channel, remember I said take off the keyboard in the top right hand corner and press A. That activates and deactivates your automation lane. So an easy one. We're not going to make this slide. So if I click this, it changes it to frequency. If you click on or off, it changes it to on and off. You can just draw that on there, and you'll notice the difference as I play this loop. It will just filter that low end out and then kick back in when this is looping round. It sounds terrible. Doom, 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 doom. What the fuck was that? It's just an example. I'm not going to hit it right first time, so you just audition it again. I'm going to move this there. That there. And that. don't quite like that upon listening back. So I'll come back in. Maybe just cut it out. No, that's cool. Let's extend this across. It's just a subtle difference, so it's not the same all the time. I mean, you can if you really want to, just do it on the end and just cut that off. The reason I put the kick there is to show you that the auto filter is kind of taking over everything. But normally you'll just remove the kick, maybe for even a couple or just 4 bars, and then it gives a signal really that something else is about to happen. So if you was going to incorporate something new into this tune, there's a transition point between each section. You don't want it just to be banging all the way across and something new just drop in. You want this little transition. So if I just take a loop of some sort, let's find one. Let's find, maybe we'll go with a drum loop of some sort. Let's have a look. These are not loops, these are just hits. What's this tech house movement? Drum hits, vocal hits. I like a lot of hits. In your sample packs, look for hits rather than loops. Unless you want to be a loop master, just look for fucking loops. Let's search A minor. I'll prefer hit the M. Good old non-responding, not responding, should I say. It seems to happen in every video. I don't know, I'm flying through these tutorials. I'm backtracking sometimes and fucking things up. I'm not a qualified teacher. However, I'm just showing you some basics of what I know and what I do. For me, it's more intuitive because I've been doing it for so long and trying to break it down. I haven't done any lesson plans or anything, so just bear with me. Hopefully, you find it useful. So we're going to get an A minor. And whatever's in the sample pack, anything that's A minor should come out. So let's extend these across. There we go. We've got synth chords. What's this? Okay. So if you wanted that to come in, we'll drag this onto an audio channel. This transition here will help that come in. So I'm going to play the beat. It's going to get to there. I'm then going to click this to turn this on. Let's just triple check it's not massively loud so it doesn't sound fucked. It probably will be. Let's audition it. Yeah, overpower everything. Just turn it down a bit. Still probably a little bit loud, but we'll turn it off for now. Just so you can see when you're creating, and we'll come into this in more when we're doing layouts. That transition point there where it changes on the end of the 8th bar is really important. Ready? You should be able to understand what I mean by there. That sounded terrible. You can chop it up if you want. You can steal, like I said yesterday when I did the other tutorial, you can steal bits and put them into a sampler. So hopefully that clear things up. So this is the baseline we're going to roll with for this track. Maybe in the next bit, we'll talk you through adding another element. So just so you know, this drum beat, which is very simple, the bass line, which is very simple, we're all trying to use native elements that are attributed to Ableton as best as possible and make it accessible for you guys to maybe copy along or figure out your own thing. Now, we don't have to just stick, that's not like, well, this is it now. You know, that's the full drum pattern. Feel free to add more. You can layer the claps if you want. You can add more stuff in. You can add snare rolls in here. But we'll cover sort of all of the icing, which is what I call it, with crashes and build-ups and all of that as we progress through together and make this tune into something which should be pretty fucking decent by the end of it. So sorry for the confusion with well, sorry for technically being wrong when I was talking about A and E not working. I'm not really that sorry. I'm not really that fucking sorry because it wasn't about it's not a musical lesson. It's more about how you operate Ableton and if you face that problem with a clashing key, how to change it. So hopefully you've learned something.